Today, we're talking about the 6 stages of the thyroid struggle. Now, nothing about this is from a study or 100% scientific. This is something that I've observed over the last 12 years working with tons of thyroid patients, and also the kinds of things that I struggled with in my journey. And it was a long one. And anybody who has been finally diagnosed with a thyroid problem understands this. So hopefully this resonates with you and you can understand that you are not alone, and that if you feel some of these things, hopefully this will inspire you or motivate you to get to the bottom of your problems. Like, ask the questions and advocate for yourself. That is the name of the game. Let's talk about those 6 stages. And we have to kind of wonder, like, how did we even get where we're at? Maybe you used to have plenty of energy. Maybe your weight was relatively easy to manage. You could kind of go off track with eating or exercise and really nothing really happened with your weight. You could eat reasonably well, sleep at night, and basically feel like a pretty decent, normal human being and functional human being. And then somewhere along the way, things started to change. It probably didn't really happen overnight, but in fact, most women that I work with, their thyroid symptoms crept up slowly over time. And with that gradual progression, we just kind of start adjusting to them and start to think that it's just things that happen because we are getting older. And I always tell people that one of the things that was the most frustrating for me is that I would be 20 or 22 years old. And I was told many times by my providers when I would go in looking for help because of my energy problems, they would tell me that it was just because I was getting older. And that just seemed very daunting when you're 22 years old and supposed to be in the prime of your life. And I still, I felt like I was 100 years old. That was not the answer I was looking for. Thank goodness I did not listen to it. But then we start to blame ourselves for all the problems we're feeling. We might start thinking, we're lazy. We are just unmotivated. Maybe we're just a hypochondriac. Maybe these symptoms are just not really there. And this is where I kind of came up with these stages. This is where in the first stage, you don't necessarily feel sick, but you're not quite right. And you're maybe a little more tired than you used to be. Maybe you're feeling a little more anxious or irritable, sad, perhaps only in certain situations at first. And then your weight starts becoming harder to maintain. You're doing essentially the same things you've always done, but suddenly those things just don't work anymore. Maybe your rings feel tighter. Maybe your face looks puffier in the morning. Your feet and ankles may swell. Your clothes don't fit quite the way they used to. But none of this seems significant enough to make you think, I have a health problem, because it just creeps in over time. Instead, you start thinking that you're the problem. And that's where this, I'm lazy, I'm unmotivated, I'm eating too much, I'm not working out enough. And then you just keep trying harder. And that's when we get into stage 1, this starting to try harder and harder. Now the fatigue has become more noticeable. Your mood might be changing to the point where it's not just about feeling a little more down or less motivated or more anxious. You actually are thinking, maybe I need to seek someone for some antidepressants or anti-anxieties and things like that. Now your weight definitely isn't responding the way that it used to. And again, you're just told it's because you're getting older and your metabolism is slowing down. You can't possibly think you could be at a normal, healthy weight anymore. So what do most of us do? We exercise more. We eat less. Maybe we start being obsessive and tracking about everything we eat. I hear this all the time. We cut out major food groups like carbohydrates, or we skip meals. We do more and more cardio. And when that doesn't work, we reduce calories even further. Many of the people that I'm working with reduce their calories to under 1,000 per day. And that is not good, because that will backfire after a time. That's for another episode. But this is where I sometimes see people start developing behaviors that can border on disordered eating, not necessarily because they set out to restrict food excessively, but because they're desperately trying to figure out why their body isn't responding. If you're thinking like 1,500 calories isn't working, I just need to eat 1,200 or then 1,000. Meanwhile, you're exhausted. Recovery from exercise becomes ridiculous. It becomes more difficult. You may start getting sick more frequently, and you're still not getting the results you worked so hard for. And eventually you realize something really isn't right. Something must be up. So then you ask for help. You make an appointment. You tell your healthcare provider, I'm exhausted, I'm gaining weight, or I can't lose weight. I just don't feel like myself. My hair is changing. It won't hold color. I'm cold all the time. Maybe you're constipated. Maybe you have diarrhea. Maybe your mood is different. And you run some blood work. And then you get that call that everything is normal. And you're wondering what normal even means because you feel terrible. Was your thyroid function evaluated appropriately for your symptoms and your clinical situation? Were potential causes outside the thyroid considered? And was the trend over time examined? Or did they even look at one number or more than one number from your blood draw? Sometimes there's simply nothing abnormal yet, but sometimes there's more to investigate. And instead you might hear, this is what I heard, you're getting older, just don't stress so much, try to relax, eat less, exercise more. And if individual symptoms become significant enough, you might be offered something for those symptoms. For me, it was antidepressants and anti-anxieties. I hear that a lot as well for most other people. Sometimes people get stuff for constipation. Sometimes you get sleep medication. Maybe you're offered some medication for weight management. And now in this day and age, there's a million things that can help us with that. And sometimes those treatments are absolutely appropriate, but it does not fix the underlying problem. The problem is that nobody is asking why all of these seemingly unrelated symptoms started appearing together. And so we just move on and things get worse. Everything gets louder. And this is stage 3. Except now you're not getting better. You're on the antidepressants, you're on the anti-anxieties. You kind of are wondering, when is this going to get better? When am I going to feel different? When am I going to even have any semblance of normalcy again? You just keep getting worse. The fatigue becomes just unrelenting. I remember the only way that I could describe fatigue, my kind of fatigue for people, was the pregnancy fatigue, like first trimester pregnancy fatigue. And if you have had a pregnancy and you have understood the exhaustion from that first trimester, that's the only way that I can describe it. And I still say that it was worse than that for my situation. The weight gain becomes worse, or it becomes way more difficult to lose whatever you might weigh. Maybe you don't keep gaining, but you cannot lose it very well. Your mood is worse. Your stress tolerance is terrible. And your sleep now is impacted. You might be able to sleep for 10 hours and not ever feel rested. Your cravings increase. Exercise becomes way more difficult, more stressful for the body. And then maybe something happens in life where you have another major stressor that comes at you. You have a baby, you go through perimenopause, you experience a divorce, you move, you lose someone you love, you're a caregiver, your job becomes incredibly stressful, you go through an illness, and the body that was already struggling now has another physiological demand placed upon it. Maybe you're diagnosed with clinical depression or anxiety, and that just keeps going. You keep taking those medications. And then maybe an autoimmune condition emerges if you're being tested for things to rule out what the symptoms are and what might be at the root of that. But you're struggling with significant digestive problems potentially at this time. Constipation, bloating, food intolerances, reflux, or various other symptoms. And at this point, this isn't, I've been a little tired lately. You know something is very wrong. And eventually you go back for help. And hopefully you are getting a diagnosis. This is when I hear, and this was my situation, I would just be like, thank goodness. Or I'm like hoping I could get some kind of diagnosis, which sounds so messed up. Who wants a diagnosis of anything? But I needed something to explain why I felt the way I felt. Because if not, then I was a hypochondriac, or I was lazy, or I was unmotivated. And that's just not the case for 99% of the people out there. This is when a diagnosis shows up. It sometimes takes a really long process to do this. This time, you may be maybe your TSH, which is sort of the main marker that is tested. I know back when I was getting tested, I think it was the only one. I'm pretty sure it was the only thyroid marker that was tested, which we know is not even related to how much thyroid hormone is in your body. It's what your brain is telling your thyroid to do. But maybe it shows up now, but the range for normal is so broad. Now we need to look at it at a narrower range so we can actually see how we're functioning. That's the difference between maybe conventional wisdom and functional wisdom when it comes to thyroid markers. But maybe the thyroid hormone levels come back abnormal. Maybe thyroid antibodies are finally checked and you learn you have Hashimoto's. And for a moment, that diagnosis can actually feel like relief because finally there's a reason for you feeling the way you've been feeling for so long. There's a name for it. There's something you can do about it. You start thyroid hormone replacement when it's indicated, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to start with Synthroid or levothyroxine. And thyroid medication can be incredibly important. If your body isn't producing adequate thyroid hormone all by itself, replacing that hormone isn't a failure. It's treating a physiological need. It's much different than just taking antibiotics at random or overusing antibiotics. This is replacing something that is not functional in your body and you need it. I do not have a thyroid gland due to thyroid cancer. Therefore, I am on thyroid hormone replacement for the rest of my life. I absolutely need it to survive, and it's not considered a failure to be on this. A lot of people try to do or want to fix their thyroid naturally, and there comes a point in time where you can't do it without medication. So don't feel like it's a failure if you ever get on that medication. It can be really important, but then something frustrating can happen. Your labs improve and you still don't feel like yourself. That was definitely me. Maybe your energy improves somewhat, but you're still exhausted. Maybe your TSH is now perfect, but losing weight is still incredibly difficult and you're told that that's just your new normal. Maybe you're still constipated. Maybe you're still struggling with sleep. You're still losing hair. Still dealing with blood sugar issues, but that's never been addressed on your own, or you have to do that on your own. You may deal with those gut problems, nutrient deficiencies, stress, inflammation, and then we layer hormone changes like perimenopause or menopause onto that, or whatever else is happening alongside the thyroid condition. And this is where many people discover something important, that getting the thyroid diagnosis wasn't necessarily the end of the story. It was just the beginning in most cases. And I believe that was 100% true for me, even with dealing with thyroid cancer. I still felt like I was starting over 3 years after that diagnosis, treatment, surgeries, and that kind of thing. That brings us to stage 5, where this is where I was in about 2010. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was that way years before, trying to find the answers, but now I knew that I did not have a thyroid gland due to the cancer, and I was still feeling like that. And that's where I dug in and dug deeper, looking at different things, more of like holistic lifestyle things, nutritional things to help support the medication that I was taking. That is a point where I just said, I'm not going to just manage symptoms. I want to understand what's happening in my body, and I want to look at the whole picture, not just the thyroid, not just my Synthroid for suppressing the thyroid cancer, but I wanted to, and I looked deep into nutrition, my blood sugar, my gut health, my stress and recovery, my detox pathways, my sleep, my movement and my muscle, my hormones, everything, my health history, the medications I was taking. And I looked at how all of those pieces interact. And this is what I do when I'm working with individuals that are struggling with similar processes that I have, because you aren't just what your TSH says. The TSH does not give us the full picture. You're a person with dynamic needs, different lifestyles, where everybody has to deal with their own situation on a customized and personal basis in order to feel and function their very best. It's not about we're going to cure the Hashimoto's or the hypothyroidism or the Graves' disease. We're not going to probably magically make the thyroid gland start working again at a certain point. It's about asking better questions. What does your body need in order to function as well as it possibly can from this point? Maybe that's improving nutrition, rebuilding your muscle, addressing your iron or other nutrient deficiency. Maybe it's working with your GI health. And a lot of people, it's looking at their blood sugar, even if they don't have a diabetic or a pre-diabetic diagnosis. Maybe it's getting serious about your sleep and your stress recovery. Everybody, and I feel like especially thyroid patients, really struggle with stress management. And in general, they're less resilient to stress that's coming at them than people without a thyroid gland. Again, anecdotal, it's my observation, it's my personal story. I do see this a lot, and we have to not underestimate the impact of stress on our bodies, especially when we're trying to get our thyroid back in check. The goal isn't to simply get your lab results into the green, into that reference range of normal. We need to be optimal, and we deserve to be optimal. And that may look different for everybody. As an example, if my TSH gets to 2.0, which is in a very good, healthy, normal range per the standard conventional ranges, I feel terrible and my tumor markers increase. That is an example where you can be in the normal range and still feel terrible and have symptoms, and it's not good for you. Now, that is going to look different for me than it might for you. That's where you need to have someone working with you and understanding how your body is functioning and what those numbers mean for you. If you recognize yourself somewhere between stage 0 and stage 5, don't assume the answer is that you just need more willpower or you need to exercise more or eat less. Start asking, what changed? What haven't we looked at yet? And what can I do now to support my body better? And if you've reached stage 5 and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired and you're ready for a more comprehensive approach, that's exactly the work I do through the Total Health Reset. And one thing I would really recommend that you do is that you take time to look at all the things that you've done and look at where you're at with your health and what are you going to tolerate now and for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. What are you not willing to do? What are you not willing to just allow to happen to your body? Because you can feel better, you can function better. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what stage of the thyroid process you are in. You can make it better. And it can get better. Reach out if you have any questions about that. I'd love to help you and support you in any way possible.